Welcome to another Masters Academy Parent Podcast. In this session, we'll be discussing using Arts Through the Ages as your core curriculum. Topics will include laying out your annual calendar, choosing a time period, choosing a spiritual emphasis, deciding on a unit of study, adding in the academic components, adding additional resources, and assembling the pieces. As you learned in the previous podcast, developing a plan for adding the arts to your homeschool, planning is of the essence. By now, you've set some pretty concrete goals and have decided to go for broke and use the Arts Through the Ages curriculum as your core. Congratulations, you are a unique breed of homeschooler. I know we're going to have a great time together. So let's talk a little bit about laying out the annual calendar. First, I want to encourage you to spend about a week in the summer to do all of your planning for the year. You can run on the beach jumping for joy while you do this if you want. You can do it alone or with your spouse. But doing all of this planning up front will save you a ton of time during the year. It's like doing once a month cooking. All you have to do is go to the freezer and dinner's done. It's similar to having a prepackaged curriculum that's already done for you, except you did it yourself and customized it to the specific needs of your children and your family. What could be better than that? So let's get started with step 1, laying out the annual calendar. One of the first things I always did as I was planning my school year was to lay out my annual calendar grid. This included the starting and ending dates for the school year, holidays, family trips and events, how many days each week we would be doing school, and a listing of special events like sports tournaments, business conventions, and the like. By doing this, you're no longer at the mercy of life handing you surprises. You've already laid out the exact number of days you're required to do school, but you've worked them in and around your life. So if you want to take 3 weeks off in the middle of the year to go on a trip with your family, do it. If you only want to go to school 3 days a week, do it. It's your home school. You can do whatever you want. This includes keeping your structure very flexible. You could do a standard recurring weekly plan like the one I kept for years. On Mondays, we did a full day of school. Tuesdays, we spent the whole day at Masters Academy of Fine Arts. On Wednesdays, we just read. Thursdays was a full day of school, and on Friday, we either did a full day of school or a project and field trip. Or you could do things in blocks of time. So on Mondays, maybe study math and science. Tuesday, history. Wednesday, literature. Thursday, grammar and writing. Friday, field trips and projects. Or you could use a combination of all of the above. It's totally up to you. But the main thing is that you have the year planned out, you know what all is going to be covered, and then you can take the pieces and put them wherever you want them to be. Step 2 is to study a time period. Again, this is a very flexible option. One way of doing this is to coordinate topics by what your family is doing during the year. Maybe your husband has a long business trip out west and your whole family is planning to go. So why not coordinate school with vacation and enjoy it? An obvious choice for something like that would be to do a study of westward expansion from the Romantic era. But then later that year, you may be counting on attending a local Renaissance fair. So pick the medieval Renaissance period for that time frame. You may have chosen to work with an immigrant population as a family ministry this year, so why not study the growth of immigration into America at the beginning of the 20th century? Then you would simply choose the modern time period and related lessons. Another way to do this would be to study everything in chronological order. You could spend a whole year doing the ancient time period, the following year study the medieval Renaissance time period, and so forth. A third method would be to take a child's interest and find everything related to that through all of the time periods. For instance, if your son is a big war buff, why not study the history of war from the ancient through the modern periods all in one year? Or maybe your daughter is an athlete. Why not study athletics through the ages? Or perhaps your child is an artist or a musician. Choose a similar path by studying artists and musicians in their historical context. Each unit you choose in Arts Through the Ages will include history, art, and music lesson plans, a virtual field trip, academic tie-ins, and a community service project. So mixing and matching units is a piece of cake. You don't have to stay in one time period. You're free to mix and match elements. Step 3 is to choose a spiritual emphasis. This can be as varied as the options I just laid out for you. At the beginning of each time period on the website, there's a whole section called Spiritual Emphasis. In this area, you will find topics with related scriptures to tie into that particular time period. We've chosen an overall vision for each period, but you can choose other options on your own as well. For instance, the topics we have chosen for each time period include ancient, building a firm foundation, medieval Renaissance, rebirth and reformation, Baroque, embellishment or adding line upon line and precept upon precept, Classical, balance, doing all things in moderation. Romantic, movement or following hard after God. And modern, revolution. If you're using multiple units to tie in with family trips, you can choose a spiritual emphasis for each unit. If you're studying history chronologically, you can choose one spiritual emphasis for the entire year. If you're studying based on child interests, you can choose a spiritual emphasis by unit, or you may choose to make up your own spiritual emphasis to go along with what you feel is needed in your child's life. Simply look through the scriptures given, choose one or multiples to work from. Then add related Bible studies from outside sources, scripture memory work, or other ways to relate the truth of scripture to what they will be studying in every other context. Please check out part 2 of this podcast, Using the Arts Through the Ages as Your Core Curriculum.